What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I try and help you guys keep on top of the macro developments coming out of China. My name is Tony. For those of you watching for the first time, if that is something you might be interested in, and if you want to be just as informed as my clients, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. For everybody else, it's good to see you. I'm sorry that I couldn't get an episode up last week. There was a last minute trip that I had to take and I simply did not have the time to put together a quality episode for you guys. I wanted to make sure whatever I put up was well researched and filmed, and I just couldn't get that out the gate in time, so I'm sorry about that. This week, I'm doing something a little bit different. There's been so much international and domestic attention on the Beijing-based National Bureau of Statistics release of the 2020 census. There's been so much debate and discussion about that census. I decided to just release an episode that looks specifically at this. So this episode is only going to be looking at the census. If I have time to put up another episode for the week, I'll probably put that up on Sunday, or else I'll release one early next week. As always, guys, it's always a huge help. I'm a small YouTuber, so if you hit the like button, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And a big thank you, as always, to my Patreon supporters. You guys rock. Thank you so much for your support. Okay guys, let's jump in. Like I said, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know already, on Tuesday of this week, the National Bureau of Statistics in Beijing published the official data for the 2020 National Census. This is a once-in-a-decade census. The last one was in 2010. This is for 2020, looking at the years from 2010 through to 2020. This was conducted in December of last year. The publication was supposed to come out last month in April, but it was postponed for a month, and we covered that at the time, and there were a few speculations as to why that was the case, but now we have the official numbers at least. Now, the data published by the government showed that China's population increased to 1.41 billion persons officially in 2020, compared with 1.4 billion a year earlier. So officially a slight population increase. Now, a few weeks ago, we covered a Financial Times article that was causing a lot of waves domestically and internationally, which claimed that the census would show China's population decreasing. The article argued that there would be a decline in the official population upon publication of the census by the National Bureau of Statistics. This would have represented a decline about a decade earlier than previously predicted by the government. Now, the Financial Times still maintains this position. It reported after the publication of the census on Tuesday that it has multiple sources close to the National Bureau of Statistics which claim that the population did in fact decline, but that the number was revised up for political reasons. Of course, we have no way of confirming this. The only numbers that we have are official numbers, but even the official numbers are quite telling. The official figures show that the population grew just 5.4% from 1.34 billion in 2010. This is the lowest rate of increase between censuses since the People's Republic of China began collecting data back in 1953. It is also official that the PRC is older, its average age is older than the United States. The average age of the population stood at 38.8 years in 2020, compared with 38 years with the US. So it's older than the US and aging faster than the US. Okay, now let's look at the actual details of the census. This is an official English translation from the National Bureau of Statistics that was published with the Chinese version earlier in the week. Quote, population by household types. The average size of a family household was 2.62 persons, or 0.48 persons less than the 3.10 persons in 2010. The family households continued to downsize because of increased population mobility and the fact that young people after marriage live separately from parents with improved housing conditions. 3. Population by regions. Compared with data in 2010, the proportion of the population in the eastern region increased by 2.15 percentage points. That in the central areas decreased by 0.79 percentage points. That in the western region increased by 0.22 percentage points. And that in the northeast of China decreased by 1.20 percentage points. Although on this point, there are several reports coming out now claiming that the Dongbei, or the northeastern area, often referred to as Manchurian English, has actually seen a population collapse in the last 10 years, losing about 10% of the population. Sex composition. The sex ratio, female 100, male to female, was 105.07, basically the same level with a slight decline compared with that in 2010. The sex ratio at birth was 111.3, down by 6.8 compared with that of 2010. Age composition. Compared with 2010, the shares of people in the age groups of a 0 to 14, 15 to 59, and 60 and above were up by 1.35 percentage points, down by 6.79 percentage points, and up by 5.44 percentage points respectively. The share of children rose again, proving that the adjustment of China's fertility policy has achieved positive results. Meanwhile, the further aging of the population imposed continued pressure on the long-term balanced development of the population in the coming period. Now, anyone who is skeptical of this data will look at that line that says, proving that the adjustment of China's fertility policy has achieved positive results, and see red flags. That certainly does look like it was added for political reasons. Okay, let's look at some positive news. Educational attainment. Compared with 2010, the number of people with university education went up from 8,930 persons per 100,000 to 15,467 persons per 100,000. The average years of schooling for people aged 15 and above increased from 9.08 years to 9.91 years, and the illiteracy rate dropped from, that's ironic, dropped from 4.08% to 2.67%. Now, these university rates are actually quite low for a middle income economy, and its high school graduation rates are even worse, but there still is an improvement over the 2010 numbers. Population of ethnic groups. The population of the Han ethnic group was 1.28 billion, accounting for 91%, I assume, of the population. That of ethnic minorities was 125 million, accounting for 8.9%. Compared with 2010, the population of the Han ethnic group grew by 4.93%, while that of other ethnic minorities increased by 10.26%. Though on this point, we should note that based on an analysis done by the Australian Strategy Policy Institute in Sydney, it appears that birth rates among Uyghurs and Kazakhs in Xinjiang have collapsed almost 50% over the last 10 years. In a news conference after the release, Ning Zhizhe, head of the National Bureau of Statistics, said that there were 12 million births last year, which represented an 18% drop from the 14.65 million that we saw in the year before. He said that this trend is likely going to continue. He went on to say that China's fertility rate dropped to 1.3 last year, a very low level. By comparison, the US, also in a fertility slum in 2020, last week reported that its total fertility rate was 1.64 in 2020. However, the US, unlike China, is projected to see stable population growth over the next 2 decades due to the combination both of births as well as immigration. For those people who are skeptical of the official numbers coming out of Beijing this week, the number of persons under 14 years of age seems to have the most red flags. The Japanese-based media outlet Nikkei Asia pointed out in a piece that the 2020 census showed that the country had 253 million children 14 years and younger. However, new births between 2006 and 2020, the period during which these children were born, total around 239 million, based on the data of the National Bureau of Statistics each of those years. Nikkei Asia argues that this gap of over 5% means slightly more than 14 million children somehow appeared out of nowhere. Now, there has been a lot of discussion about the census data internationally, but also domestically in China. There's probably been the most discussion in China itself, as this does pertain to China's future. And there's a few of these conversations and interviews I think we should touch on here because they're important to take note of. Economics professor at Peking University's elite Guanghua School of Management, Liang Jianzhang, sparked a national conversation online when he called for China to spend 10% of its GDP to raise China's fertility rate to the replacement level of 2.1 from the current 1.3. Advising that a reward of 1 million RMB, approximately $155,000 be given for each newborn baby. I can tell you right now, this is not going to happen. Keep in mind that in 2020, the annual per capita disposable income of urban households, so this is excluding rural households, the urban household rate in China was $6,800. So this cash payment that he is advocating for would be 22 times the size of the average annual urban household income. In a separate, widely read interview with Caixin Media, Professor Liang expressed his deep concern with the census data, expressing, quote, "In relation to its per capita income, China ranks highest in the world for the cost of raising a child. Therefore, as unbelievable as China's fertility rate appears in the 2020 census data, a closer look at the underlying factors removes any suspicion or doubt. And as urbanization only intensifies, China's fertility rate will continue to decline, very likely to the lowest in the world, far lower than that of all established powers, including Japan." He went on to say, quote, "It will mean a halving of the national population every generation. It has been repeatedly demonstrated that a plunge in population ushers in a sustained weakening of scale effects and innovation capabilities, thus leading to a decline in overall national strength." End quote. In another widely read interview conducted by state media in China, Yuan Xin, a population expert at Nankai University, expressed, quote, "The elderly population in China was 264 million in 2020 and is predicted that it will increase to over 300 million in 2025, over 400 million in 2033, and about 500 million in the 2050s. Population aging is the result of the historical law of population development, which cannot be changed at all. At the same time, we predict that the fertility rate will continue to be low in the future. The current percentage of people over 60 years of age, 18.7%, will reach 35 to 36% by the middle of the century. This is the result of an aging population. It cannot be changed. So I think every one of us must face it calmly. What impact will it bring? We must also face that calmly." End quote. And of course, Beijing is trying to put as best a spin on this for its international PR work as possible. Quote, "In response to those points made by certain US media, I'd like to stress one point. Isn't China's 1.4 billion population still larger than the combined populations of the US and European countries? I wonder how these journalists turned demographers and experts in social studies come to the conclusion that China is facing a demographic crisis. We will continue to forge ahead along the path that has been proven to be correct. I hope those who made up these China-related fallacies can enjoy health and happiness like the Chinese people and witness together with us the realization of the Chinese dream together." End quote. Okay guys, that is the end of this special episode on the census data that was released this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any other questions or comments, your views, whatever, please speak to me down below. I always enjoy speaking with you guys. As always, thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time on China Update.